interact with you.
Well, greetings.
How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Yeah, we're good.
That's good.
We're glad that you're back.
Oh, I'm glad to be back. It's nice to have this dialogue, this enlightening discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Just a curiosity.
We surely let us first say that we surely enjoy coming into your experience, because experiencing you is to experience the wisdom that we have, but without you asking for it, we can't put it into practice. So when we come to play, we enjoy it because we get to deliver what we live, that wisdom, that knowing. So when there is a need for it to be asked, and we can come to you and get you to play with it, that is our highest joy. But not in our perception, in your perception. That's the highest joy. Us playing with your curiosity.
So when like we as humans experience time in a linear fashion, we went from a session we did with you earlier today, and we've now moved to the nighttime. We're having another session, and so for us, we've had that experience that's fresh in our memories, and now we're in this one. But for you, is the perception different? I guess what I'm getting at is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're operating outside of time, does that mean that all realities, all of these interactions have already occurred and you're just tuned into this one now? Would that be a fair assessment?
Give us a bit more detail.
So when you come through to this interaction, is it also fresh in your perspective or your experience, the session that we did just leading up to this one? Or is all of the sessions throughout, Mariam and I, our entire lifetime, is it all, are they all there for you to just tune into, but not one is fresher over the other? Does that make sense?
Yep. What we see is where you are vibrationally right now. So what we see is what was added to your current vibration from the previous session and previous interaction and prior interaction, and more and more and more. But we don't visit the idea of what happened back then, because we have evolved into this interaction with you. So for us, it's where you are right now. That's how we interact. We don't go back and see it as, we have taught you this, let's see how you present it right now. But we read your vibration to see where you are right now. But we do know that your previous interactions with us have led you to this vibration here and now. Would that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So what about the future? How does the future reality, where we've let's say we continue doing the sessions, are you drawing upon those at all to bring into this interaction, or are they just separate in the future ones?
Look, from our perspective, the future doesn't come to now, because we don't have the idea of how the future is based on what you believe the future is. So to us is you and your vibration, where you're standing in terms of your frequency. So as we said before, you've got different frequencies. The sum total of those frequencies create one strong frequency in you that attracts your future reality.
Right.
So the future reality is the unfolding of now. So the question is how you are managing your sum total frequency in every unfolding. That is going to be the focus of your future reality, the basis of your future reality, the foundation of it, your frequency right now will create and bring about the future reality unless you do the changes if you only want to.
Yes.
Otherwise, the future reality is going to be the same frequency, and that's why majority of the people on your planet would say it's not changing.
Mm-hmm.
What's not changing is not the future reality. It's the sum total frequency that is the frequency that they have been practicing.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. So every interaction we have with you, you're responding to the frequency that we are bringing to the interaction.
Yes, because that's what you can receive. That's not necessarily what we want. We want you to embrace the wholeness of all the possibilities that you can invite into your life. But we can see if you can receive it or not. And if you can't receive it, there's no point for us we can't assert it into your reality. We can only show you the way. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't see it. But when you don't see it, it's still okay. You just don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Because your frequency doesn't allow you to see it.
Yeah, makes sense.
So how we perceive you is when you come into an interaction with us in a session, we look at your frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we interact, and you receive the translation. And sometimes your questions are not too far from your frequency, which means you've got a question, you're very close to the frequency of receiving the answer to evolve. We'll give it to you. But sometimes you ask a question, but your core frequency is not allowing you to receive the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to give you the answer in many different ways. Sometimes the answer comes in many different segments until you get it and evolve and embrace the answer to the question. But we can't give you an answer when you're not ready.
Yes.
Because that's going to create confusion in you because of you experiencing what you call reality.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that totally makes sense. So what we were discussing with you earlier was we were touching on financial abundance, and what I distilled or took away from that conversation was if we are in our highest expression of ourself, our God self, following our highest expression and passion, would you say that if we're maintaining that state, if we're always in that state, that we are without blocks and that we are open to receiving the fullness of these messages, for instance, that you bring to us?
Okay, we need you to elaborate on your question a bit more.
So if we as individual human beings, we are operating from our highest expression and our highest passion, will that allow us to receive your messages? Let me try and rephrase that. So you're saying that you can't bring the message unless we're open to receive that message. So what I'm getting at is if we're operating from our highest expression and passion, are we then fully open to receiving those messages?
Yes. When you are in that expression, the expression of that greatness that you are, your greatest expression of the self, then that's the time that you receive answers to your question. You can fully embrace it. But most of the time, majority of people in your reality don't have that relationship with their frequency. They don't know that who they are is the frequency. That's the reason they've got problems and beliefs that are supporting having a God, holding on to religion, because what they see themselves is they think that who they are is the frequency of their religion. is the frequency of that belief that says there is a God. So they're tuning into that frequency that doesn't exist, hoping to find themselves. But they hardly receive answers because that frequency doesn't exist, and it's not the expression of their greatness. It's not the expression of their highest passion. Otherwise, they would receive answers to their questions. They keep tapping into the frequency of who they are not by holding on to religious beliefs, by holding on to false beliefs, by holding on to the beliefs that were handed to them by other people, by the society, by their parents, at a school.
Probably makes them feel safer.
It makes them feel safer, but it makes them feel acceptable. So people are having a hard time relating to who they are because they want to receive approval based on who they are not. That's the belief that keeps them where they are, and they don't receive answers. They don't receive us because to them what matters is practicing who they are not, because that's to receive approval from the society, from others. So your planet, the dominant frequency is to practice who I'm not by holding on to someone else's frequency that was given to me. And that is most of the time an agreed belief, like religion. We all go to church because that's what we all agree on, and that's where what we're practicing. It's not who we are, but the agreement is there. So it is how many people are agreeing with me more than who I truly am. That's where the majority of people having a hard time. And they keep asking questions, we give answers, but because they want to be in that agreement that matters to them more than wanting to be who they are by coming to the truth that we hold for them. You see, we don't want you to sign an agreement with us. We don't want you to condition yourself to receiving us or becoming our truth. What we are doing is we are reminding you of who you are through the knowledge that is available, not by holding on to the illusion of there is God, because there is no God. But how many people on your planet would agree that there is a creator?
Most.
So that's the agreement. That's where they are seeking their truth. Even though that agreement doesn't give them the financial abundance, doesn't set them free, doesn't give them the ultimate joy. But it's an agreement, and majority of the people are agreeing, so I must go there. It doesn't serve me, but I get to see more people around me.
So I wonder how did that come about in the first place? How did people collectively choose to agree that there is a God and they should follow certain ways of doing things?
From the place of disconnection. That's how it all happened. From the place of disconnection, wanting to come out of loneliness by controlling others. By bringing others to my loneliness, making sure that I won't be lonely anymore, I must come up with some form of reinforcing a limiting belief, and then I'll create that agreement and momentum. So they used a momentum in that direction, bringing more people into the agreement that wouldn't allow them to be lonely. From the place of disconnection, they created momentum. More disconnected people joined them. And that's how they become like religious groups, cults, and all those practices. From the place of disconnection, not knowing who I am, creating momentum and attracting the same wavelength. Wanting to move further away from the truth.
Yeah.
That would set me free. If I only would let go of wanting to be manipulated because someone else is lonely. So they've been responding to the frequency of loneliness in somebody else fulfilling that frequency, as we said to you in your earlier session. Some people try to bring money into their experience by tapping into someone else's frequency. Again, that's a common practice on your planet. They give up their own path of highest excitement and full potential, going for someone else's frequency to bring money into their experience. That's the same thing that happens when people become religious. When they find themselves not moving on, staying with someone else's belief, agreeing with them, they want to experience truth through that person's frequency. So it goes back to who began the whole thing, the very person that initiated it and thought, I'm bringing people to my frequency. So we're all giving that momentum and co-creating that. So they are all practicing the same frequency because that very person that has started the whole thing made them agree with that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It does. I just wonder, was it done with malicious intent, or was it started innocently and then developed where some groups became malicious in their intent?
So our question is, why would you want to know about the intention? What would that clarify in your experience?
Well, I guess that there's so many people in the world that have bought into this belief system. And if they knew how it began, perhaps they would change their perception so they could tap into their own, maybe see it in a different light. So then if that brought at least the question into their mind, if that's how it really started, perhaps then they would look to their own, their own path of highest excitement and highest expression and their own passion. Perhaps that would give them more space to then develop their own sense of self rather than putting that belief system somewhere else.
So let us take you back to Jesus Christ, that you guys all say there is Jesus Christ and he was on the cross and he died for us. That's a very common statement that we hear from many of these guys on your planet. So Jesus' disciples, when they saw him dead, they felt disempowered. They experienced disempowerment. So what happened is they created something that wasn't there, the Son of God, to bring people into their position of agreeing with them so they can find their power again. Controlling people, creating that agreement, creating that cult by bringing people to a narrative that never existed. Jesus was a man that found his alignment and truth. He didn't tap into anybody else's frequency. What he perceived us as the Father. But what happened is his followers, people that tapped into his frequency, couldn't do it by themselves. So they kept tapping into that frequency and brought more people to agree that that's the truth, but they are tapping to a consciousness frequency that got to experience life on earth and using his perceptions of God, eternity, controlling other people. So what they've done as followers and disciples is never allowed themselves to receive us, but they kept perceiving and wanting to receive the truth through the guide that they journeyed with, Jesus Christ, and they created this thing called church, which is truly bringing people into that agreement that they must tap into that frequency that a guy called Jesus was practicing, and he was successful at it. He found his truth and momentum. Then he brought people into it, and then once he was no longer around, people that were left behind started controlling other people, brought them into that agreement, and it kept unfolding because there is momentum.
Yeah.
And the dominant vibration on your planet is, I must go where there is more agreement because I can relate, and that means that's the truth. So they keep going to the frequency that someone tapped into called Jesus, because the agreement has got momentum. So they kept believing it, practicing it, generation by generation. And now it's like what you see as church, what you see as cults, what you see as all these Christians is just a practice momentum of tapping into a frequency that once a guy called Jesus found it to be okay. He benefited from it. He downloaded us. He connected with us. He called us Father. Now that's the stream. But do they truly receive us? No. At some level, yes. But at many levels, no. Because they want to receive us through Jesus. That's not possible.
Wow. That's very interesting.
So Christianity is to tap into the frequency that a guy called Jesus tapped into, called us Father, gave us a label that was aligned with his path, with his unfolding. And he knew how to find alignment. He knew how to download us. He knew how to tap into us. You guys are doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
But then his followers kept tapping into it, and because they wanted to be in the position of power, they had a belief that they had to keep going with this. That's not what Jesus said. Mm-hmm. They made it up. They had to follow through with it. They created churches. So, are these Christians tapping into the truth? Not really. They're tapping into a guy called Jesus, calling it the truth. But are they downloading us and receiving us as you guys are? No, not really, because they're not allowing it, because their belief is I must tap into that and I'm not deserving of receiving it directly. Because if I would receive it directly, that means that I'm going to go be lonely and I can't be part of the agreement. And agreement is to feel safe. Agreement is I'm doing the right thing. Agreement is to feel loved. Agreement is to know who God is. Again, we keep saying there is no God. There is no creation. You're just unfolding.
Wow. It's fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.